you like drum, harmonium?
Yeah, the drum is good. Today is the Disappearance. Today is the Disappearance Day of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, so we're going to be discussing. I thought this morning we would discuss more about his life, and this evening discuss more about his teachings. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Shodhanandana Rajajana Ranjana Shodhanandana Rajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Patera, to Sri Srimad His Divine Grace, Obhai Charanar Avinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Jayam Vishnupad Paramhamsa Parivrajagacharya Statera, to Sri Srimad His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Skandi Giri Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Nam Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Ram Sikho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vashri Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Radha Krishna Prabhu Govinath Shama Kunda Radha Kundi Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Ki Jai, Shri Maya Purna Paditam Ki Jai, Gunga Mayi Ki Jai, Jhumna Mayi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Shamavera Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Nitai Gopramanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Guru. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Parishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Shunyabadi Pushchati Rashatarine Mukam Kuroti Vachalam Pangolangayati Girim Yukrapa Tamam Bande Siguru Dinatarinam Vanchakapatru Vyuscha Krupashinduvi Vacha Potitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. In meditating on Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur, I can never speak about him without speaking about Srila Prabhupada's connection, because they go together, they're interwoven. And just as Srila Prabhupada had a mission to take exactly what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur gave, but make it digestible, relatable to people in America, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta also had the same mission, because India had just become industrialized around that time, Industrial Revolution, and the world was totally changing. So the world was becoming very modern. And so traditional practices, some of them could not be taught as his father had taught. And so what Srila Prabhupada was doing, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was also doing. And the position of a disciple, the disciple always thinks, I don't know anything. I'm a fool. My spiritual master knows everything. I have no qualification. I simply have to follow what he taught and what he did, and everything will be successful. At the same time, he has to be smart enough to understand the context in which his spiritual master was speaking, because it may not be the context in which we're speaking. So he has to make that adjustment. So that's what Srila Prabhupada had to do, but also Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had to do from the time of Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur made adjustments because his preaching was going out at a different time from his father's, slightly different time, coming later, and to a broader class of people, those who were not Vaishnavas or only Brahmins, who were only familiar with Vedic culture, but to everyone. So certain things were changed, how initiations were done was changed, what they did at initiation was changed, and emphasis was put very much on kirtan and preaching. That was where all the emphasis was. As we know from Srila Prabhupada, he was always emphasizing spreading Krishna consciousness. And when you study the life of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, what will always strike you is how much Srila Prabhupada was following exactly what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was doing, and how Prabhupada, so many things that we thought Prabhupada was just saying of his own were actually statements of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. It was like perfectly following. And perfectly following in two senses. As I said, exactly following, but also exactly following understanding the heart of his guru so that he could apply in context. Because if you don't understand the heart, how could you apply in context? You may do something different from what your guru did, but you have to know that this is what he would have done in this situation, or this is what he would have wanted done in this situation. So they both were doing that. And some of you may know that there was a process at the time of initiation in which one was given a form and the details of that form. Not that that form was being revealed to that person, but it was a practice. That you should practice following them, practice as this personality. This is this personality's name, this is their age, this is their rasa, this is their service, and like that. It was not that the guru was saying, this is who you are, but this seems to be your proclivity, so practice it. So that was given at initiation. And so this is just one example, and that was a tradition that came after Lord Chaitanya, specifically by a disciple of Gopal Guru Goswami named Dhyana Chandra. And so he codified that, and so that went down even to the time of Bhaktivinoda. The Bhaktisiddhanta stopped it. Things are different, it will be misused, misunderstood. And instead of giving at initiation these, what's called Ekadash Bhav, these 11 aspects of who you are, who you should practice to be, he put emphasis on the holy name, and he said, through profuse chanting of the holy name, this will all be revealed. So previously, it was either revealed by the Guru or given by the Guru, and now he's saying the holy name will reveal everything. So a lot of the things that he didn't do, he said the results would be same results would be achieved by chanting the holy name. So he stressed specifically kirtan, glorified kirtan, and said everything would be revealed by kirtan. So that's just an example of something he changed, and we know that when Prabhupada came, he was asked, where is 16 rounds in Shastra? And Prabhupada said, it's not in Shastra. Said I was just experimenting with you Westerners, what you could do and what you couldn't do. And so I came up with that number. But traditionally, 64 rounds, that was normal. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur had a mission to express bhakti in a way that people would take it seriously. It was not taken seriously, especially intellectuals would take it seriously. They did not take it seriously. Gaudiya Vaishnavism was so obscure that you may know that at the time of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, when he was becoming interested in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, he could not find a copy of Chaitanya Charitamrita. So you can just imagine how obscure it was, how there was no interest or practice of it, and it was not seen as a process to be followed by anyone who had any intellectual acumen. So that was his mission, to especially restore the integrity of bhakti. And when he was getting to a certain point, he had a mission, and he was thinking, okay, we have a mission, we are making progress, who is going to carry on this mission after I go? So everyone who has a mission naturally thinks of succession. How will it go? Because if you just create something and then you leave and it falls apart, then in a sense it's a failure. So he thought, who can do it? And amongst his sons apparently, or his existing children at that point, he didn't find anyone, so he prayed for a ray of Vishnu. There was a book called The Ray of Vishnu. That was who he prayed for. He prayed a ray of Vishnu would come. And there were two signs, maybe one more specifically, that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was a ray of Vishnu. His umbilical cord was wrapped around him like a Brahman thread, so it could have been a coincidence, but it's not normal. But specifically when the garland fell off Jagannath, when the baby was brought during the Puri Rath Yatra, when it stopped at the home, Bhaktisiddhanta Thakura's home, and his wife brought him out. That was confirmation, at least to Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, that this is the ray of Vishnu. And I was thinking about something quite interesting, just to put a magnifying glass on the qualities of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. We know the story. He was either 2 or 3 years old, and some mangoes were brought home. And before they were offered, he ate one. And so his father explained to him. And all of you who are parents know, what can you explain to a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old that they actually get? I mean, you try to explain, but you always see that they never do what you explain, at least in my remembrance. Like, pretty much they do the opposite. Is that true? Is that your experience? Like, they're too young to actually reason. You ate a mango, wasn't offered. Try to explain that to a 2-year-old. And it was 2 or 3, and he understood very clearly. He understood so clearly that he made a vow at the age of 3 to never eat mangoes. It just, I was meditating on that this morning. It's quite unusual. That in the first place, he would make a vow. In the second place, he could keep the vow his entire life. You could imagine, okay, when you're older, keeping the vow, okay. But those first years, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, he kept the vow, all the way up till he was a young adult, which would be difficult to keep a vow, don't you think? So, just to magnify this a little further, then I began thinking, okay, have we made vows we haven't kept? Yes. How old were we when we made those vows? Probably adults. So is it difficult to keep a vow? Yes. And a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old keeps a vow for his entire life. It's not an ordinary soul can do that. And so we have examples that he is a Mahapurush, descended, not ordinary personality. As Prabhupada said, when he was asked about Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he said he was a Vaikuntha man, meaning that he was not of this world. He came to this world to liberate us. And this is how we understand Krishna's affection for his devotees, especially for us, that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta came, Krishna sent him, and then he inspired Srila Prabhupada. So another example of his was when he was 7, he had memorized Bhagavad Gita. Can you raise your hand if you have Bhagavad Gita memorized at 7? Even knew Bhagavad Gita existed at 7? Can you raise your hand if you had Bhagavad Gita memorized at 77? Yeah. And then I believe he was maybe someone could correct me. He was either preaching Bhagavatam or writing purports or translating, at the age of 11 or something. Does anybody know? I'm just looking for a file. I have some information on him. Let's see if I can find it. Yes, maybe it's here. Oh. Also at 7, he was worshiping a deity of Kurma. Yeah. He memorized the Gita at 7, he could explain it. Hare Krishna. And then when he was 11, he invented a form of shorthand called Bikanto. I'm not sure why he needed it, but I guess he needed it, maybe, to take notes on what his father was speaking. So he was, of course, very intelligent. So he invented that. And Srila Prabhupada said he had a photographic memory. Whatever he read, he remembered, and he was referred to as a walking encyclopedia. So, one of the characteristic qualities, we could say two characteristic qualities of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, which seem to be contrary qualities, diametrically opposed, was his lion-like, straightforward, no nonsense, no compromise preaching, and his extreme humility. He possessed both, and or many things we can read this afternoon, many things that he spoke on the topic of humility, and he exhibited extreme amounts of humility. But in terms of preaching, it was very direct, very bold. And as a consequence, he had many enemies because he was exposing. When you expose someone, they become your enemy, obviously. So he was exposing false gurus, false apasampradayas, false sampradayas, exposing the cheating of so-called Brahmins, and it so happened that if the Brahmins, the false Brahmins were exposed, then, as within any business, if your business is exposed as cheating, or your product is compromised, your business will be destroyed. And so because he was doing that, this may come as a shock to you, but these things happen. These Brahmins made an arrangement that to kill him. And this information came to him. It actually, I believe it happened after he gave a lecture in which he explained how the Vaishnavas were greater than the Brahmins. They didn't want to hear that, but he had been revealing their actual position of these so-called Brahmins. So they wanted to kill him. And he had, this information came, and so what they did is, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had to leave. It was either I'm not sure, it was either in Parikrama or he had to leave an event. So one of his disciples, who was dressed in white, who looked like him, said, "We should change clothes, because then if they're going to kill anyone, they will kill me, because they'll think I am you, and you can wear my dress white, and then we can walk you away, and you can escape, and they won't know that it's you, because they'll be looking for someone in suffering." So he actually took that position. Amazing, isn't it? Willing to give his life. He was not killed, but anyway, he was willing to do that. And so that just shows the situation. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura did not compromise his preaching because of this. He wasn't afraid. And as we said, he made many enemies, and when he was asked, "You're doing this, you make so many enemies, why are you doing this?" And he said that, "I cannot allow people to be cheated. People don't want to be told they're being cheated. People don't want to be told that they're not right. People don't want to be told that they're a little bit too proud of their own knowledge. People want to be told, you're very nice, you're very smart, whatever you know is very good, and here's some Bhakuras. Everything will be good." Not that we can't use that as a strategy to preach, because I have experience, if you try to tell somebody what's actually true, they never talk to you again. You never hear from them again. They want nothing to do with you, because they want someone more or less to agree with them. And I have one godbrother, he said, even amongst his disciples, the most painful thing is, I know what they need to hear, but I can't tell them because they won't accept it. So what to speak of the general public, how hard it is for them to hear the truth. Even disciples, there was, I think one philosopher said something to the effect, I won't use the exact words he used, but something to the effect, the truth will set you free, but first it will make you angry. He used another slang phrase to say it'll make you angry. But it's true. The truth will set you free, but most people live in a bit of illusion, so they want to remain in denial of anything that would ruffle their world. So when someone comes and says, no, black is white and white is black, and they had it the other way around, they don't like to hear that. So he said, but it is my duty. I cannot not point out the truth to them. I cannot live without giving this truth, without telling them. I cannot allow them to live in the illusion that is being propagated by so many false preachers. So that's why he was so strong, and that's why he was so heavy. At the same time, he was so humble, he never saw his disciples as his disciples. He had many thousands of disciples. When he was asked, how many disciples do you have? He said, I have 4. 2 arms and 2 legs. They will do whatever I say. Because disciple means servant. And disciple means, in this context, as people think of disciple, oh, you have disciples. They're like your slaves. They do whatever you ask, whenever you ask, anytime, day or night. And his point was, I don't have disciples. I am servant. I am serving them. I am helping them. Only disciples I have are my 2 arms and 2 legs. They're the only ones that are subservient to me, that I will order. But I do not see my disciples as my servants. I see myself as their servant. And we saw that with Prabhupada. He said the same thing about us. He said, you are teaching me, you are my gurus, teaching me by your devotion, by your sincerity, you're teaching me how to serve my guru. So Prabhupada took it the same way. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta once gave a lecture, and he said that I am training these so-called disciples. I am their teacher. I am like a doctor in a medical school training up other doctors. I'm teaching them how to be gurus. That's my job. I'm just a trainer of more gurus. So, we know something about his initiation. His father gave him Harinam. And so, in that time, Harinam was not considered Diksha, as we say, Diksha or initiation. It's called Harinam initiation. But, so that you could get from your father. But the formal initiation you could not get from your father. So he ordered that you take that initiation from Gorkishore Das Babaji. He approached Gorkishore Das Babaji, and Gorkishore Das Babaji said, I'm not qualified to take disciples, I'm not taking disciples. That is amazing also, how qualified is Gorkishore Das Babaji. And he's so qualified, but he's feeling so low that I'm not qualified to guide anyone. And so he told his father, Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, and he said, no, you must. No reason to live if he doesn't give you, there's no reason to live if you don't get Diksha, if you don't have the shelter. So he went back and, you know the story. He asked, Gorkishore was trying to just, there's a little backstory to this. Every guru wanted Srila Bhaktisiddhanta to be their disciple because he was the most erudite scholar of the time, and it would be such a prestige to have him as their disciple. So everybody was like, he was being approached. You should become my disciple. And I'm the guru of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. My status goes up like 1,000,000 miles up, right? No. He's erudite scholar, walking encyclopedia. Gorkishore Das Babaji is illiterate. And he's bowing at the feet of Gorkishore Das Babaji, make me your disciple. Gorkishore Das Babaji says, I have decided not to take disciples. He said, no, you must accept me. He said, okay, I have to ask Mahaprabhu. And if he allows me, then I will do it. And so, most of you know the story. He came back. Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati came back. Vimal Prasad at that time came back. So, came back to Gorkishore Das Babaji. Did you speak to Mahaprabhu? I said, oh, I forgot. Yeah, I spoke to him, but I forgot to ask about you. And at that point, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta did something which was such a good example. He said, if you don't give me Diksha, I will kill myself, I think. My vision was, I just have this in my mind, it may be a total assumption. My vision is, this is the scene. He's approaching him on a bridge, and he's saying, if you don't initiate me, I will jump off this bridge. I don't know if that's true. It's just, I guess I'm part film producer. That's what I saw in my head. But anyway, however he was going to kill himself, he told him, and at that point, it kind of shook. It seems to have shaken Gorkishore Das Babaji from his, shaken him up in a way that this person is not an ordinary person, that this is serious, and that I must accept him. So that was the one and only disciple. So that shook him up so much that he gave him initiation. And so, why did he do that? Prabhupada said, your sincerity, your dedication, your service, and your willingness to give Krishna consciousness to others is your initiation. That's, I want initiation, sit in the ceremony, take some vows, throw some grains. No, that's not the real thing. Your dedication to the mission, your dedication to giving your heart to the service of Guru and Gauranga, that's your real initiation. So it was kind of like, it seems to me, when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, I will kill myself if you don't accept me, it was actually already initiated, in a sense. At that point, what could Gorkishore Das Babaji say? He was already given himself totally. Right? Just like that. So it is an example to us that this is initiation, that unless I get the shelter of my spiritual master, once I get the shelter of the whole disciplic succession through my spiritual master, then what reason is there to live? And initiation is two-part. The guru accepts and the disciple accepts. So when he saw that nature of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, what could he do? He had to accept. There's another story you may know, which is quite interesting. It is, Prabhupada emphasized Anyabhilashito Shunyam in a million different ways. Pure bhakti has nothing in it other than the motive only to satisfy Krishna. And that Prabhupada explains in his books in a million different ways from a million angles what that means. And I think for us in the West it seems pretty clear, that you serve only for the pleasure of Guru and Krishna. There's no other agenda. You don't serve to get anything. We were raised in a materialistic culture. We were burned out by it. We come to Krishna consciousness saying, no more. I don't want any more. I've had it. Whatever. I had a position. I had this. I had that. We see a little different things happening in India. We see that in India, because such a poverty-stricken country, and maybe there are other reasons I'm not entirely aware of, that it's a little more common, it seems to me, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it seems to me a little more common, people will come to bhakti to take advantage of it materially. That if I come, I can get a position, I can get wealth, I can get a white wife, she's got an inheritance, it's just like things you could not imagine being raised in a village where you sometimes maybe didn't get 3 meals a day or even 2. So there was there were people who were claiming, we are disciples of Gaurkishore Das Babaji. Why are they claiming? Because they wanted his body to build the samadhi for the prestige, and also it's good for business because now you'll have the samadhi. So like we as Westerners, we don't normally think, oh, if I have a temple, it's a good business for our family. People come, give donations, you show the deity, and that's it. But not exactly like that in India. If we get the body of Gaurkishore Das Babaji, we can put it in samadhi, that will be a samadhi temple, people will come. It's like a monopoly, because there's only one body, and we have it. You can put a pushpa samadhi, but it's not the same thing. So it's a very, business-oriented mood. And they were claiming, people were coming and claiming to be his disciples, and he only had one disciple. He said, I'm the only disciple. So he tested them by asking them, any of you, he went down, but it came out, any of you haven't had illicit sex in the last day? And none of them qualified there. I think he went from 1 year to 1 month to 1 week to I don't know, I have to go one year because 1 day is within 1 year. But anyway, he went down. So and Srila Gaurkishore Das Babaji had said something which they all misunderstood, only Bhaktisiddhanta understood. In his humility, he said, when I die, drag my body through the streets of Navadvip so people can see what a non-devotee looks like, or what a non-devotee is, something of that nature. And they thought that's what he wanted, and they were about to do it. And so Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had to prevent that, because they would have done it, and he had to show. And the police were there, and that's how he proved to the police that if you haven't had sex in a year, a month, a week, 1 day, go. And there was nobody qualified. So that is the condition of India at that time. And so, as we're talking about him speaking so strongly, because there was so much cheating going on in the name of bhakti. Ideas which are inconceivable to us. And those ideas started entering in our own movement, or around our own movement at certain points in time. Ideas such as, if you want to enter if you want to understand the mood of the gopis, if you want to enter into Manjari Bhav, etc., you have to do what Krishna does, and you have to have your own gopis and engage in illicit connection with these women. Like, wait a minute, could you explain that over again, how that works? I didn't, you lost me there. I thought this was a movement of renunciation, of strict celibacy and so forth. So, if he can go that far, that one thinks he has to engage in illicit sex to understand Gopi Bhav, then you can just understand what was going on in India. And this is what he came to preach against. So it was a real battle. Prabhupada said it was a battle. Not just amongst caste Goswamis, it was a battle. Everywhere he looked, it was a battle. Even amongst his own disciples. Some of them lost faith, and they doubted his teachings. And they thought he was creating new ideas. He was innovating, they didn't understand. So it was a great battle. And had he not done this, he could not have established pure devotional service. And so Prabhupada was given the mantle. He established pure devotional service. Prabhupada came, he gave us pure devotional service. And these things, when they started cropping up in our movement, Prabhupada stopped them. Yes. There was one story, I believe it happened here, as far as I know. Very interesting story. Some devotees formed a community, and they were only following two principles. You can guess which two.
Meat and gambling.
Yeah. Although, maybe they're only following one, because frivolous activities is also in the category of gambling. But they were chanting. They were following two principles, and they were chanting. And so devotees found this quite strange, and so came to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada had to weigh in on it, which was very good for our edification. And he said, and they said, well, at least we're chanting. They're chanting, following two principles. Or maybe one or two principles. He said, but at least we're chanting. And Prabhupada said, but that chanting is namaparad because you're not following the Guru. So he said maybe 300 lifetimes that chanting would be effective. Namaparad, disobey the order of the Guru. But Prabhupada had to do these things also, maybe not as to the same extreme and as often, but these things are going on. So, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta carries pure bhakti through the jungle of misconception and sahajiyism, etc. Prabhupada takes it, the pure thing, he keeps it pure, he brings it to us, and not to put anyone in anxiety, but he hands it to us, and our job is to keep that thing pure as we give it to others. And if we don't, then the mission in some way will suffer. The last thing I want to say, we can have some discussion. When we were here with Prabhupada, of course Prabhupada was everything to us. We never met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, and Prabhupada always told us, you will understand Srila Bhaktisiddhanta through me. We were not qualified. And then Prabhupada gave us his purports, a lot of purports in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Gave us Brahma Samhita. And the soft heart of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, that soft heart, And that dutiful heart was always thinking about spreading Krishna consciousness outside of India. And he said something to Srila Prabhupada. He said that they will take it more seriously. They will take it, they will understand it and take it up more seriously. The Western mind will understand it and take it up seriously. And so often, when I see new people coming, or when we're in India and we're doing parikrama, and so many people are coming, I often think that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati, Trikala Gyasi in the future.
Jai Shri Bhaktisiddhanta Ki.
Yeah. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he knew you would be here. You. He knew we would all be here. That was his vision. That's what he was seeing. That's what he was telling Srila Prabhupada. That, not that, could it be done, would it be done? No one believed it could be done. Nobody understood how it could be done. Every town and village, nobody took it at face value. They often thought, well, it was just to inspire us. It's not going to happen, but it's inspiring. We're going to, Vaikuntha Prabhu is going to become the next governor of Hawaii. And it's like, well, maybe it's not going to happen, but, we can think that way. That's how they took it. It's like, it's going to go to some towns and villages, somewhere. Maybe it'll go to Burma, Nepal. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he saw it. He gave that faith to Prabhupada. So all of us here, I think Srila Bhaktisiddhanta saw us. Here we are. And he wanted us to take up Krishna consciousness seriously, and he wanted us to share it seriously. That's my realization. And so we are, in a sense, the consequence of Mahaprabhu coming through the Goswamis, through Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and so forth, Narottam, and coming to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, coming down to Prabhupada, and now us. We are the byproducts of that. We are like, okay, this is what you get. After all of that, this is what we have, and we are what we have. This is the best we can offer. And so we have to be the best version. We have to embody as best we can that pure bhakti that they preserved through all through the forest of cheating and illusion, to give to us and keep it alive and shining. And we have to take that, put that in our heart and share it in its pure form. Otherwise, it disappears. One of the things that I do in my travels, because I have the opportunity to go to many places in the world where there are no disciples of Prabhupada, where there's not always a correct or deep understanding of Prabhupada in context, in terms of his heart, his mission, what he went through, what he was giving us, what he wanted us to keep. And so a lot of times I worry in those situations, because when I find that devotees don't deeply understand Prabhupada and feel deeply connected and feel connected to his mission, what's the next generation going to get? If they don't have it, imbibed it, what can they give to the next generation? It's like when you go to India, maybe not now so much, but in the 70s you go to India, you're at someone's house, and there's their great-grandfather with tilak and kurta. And then the guy in front of you, in the business suit, and then there's kids in the jeans and t-shirts. So it's something like that. When I look at that, I go, well, what's the next, what does the next generation look like, and how much do they look like in terms of their connection to Srila Prabhupada and his connection to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. So I think these things are important to just remind ourselves and remind everyone that we are just We have just been handed something that's been coming down a long way and morphing in certain ways and coming into its present form, which is the most accessible, digestible form, and continuing to do what he did, which is maintain the Siddhanta, the Tattva, at the same time, without watering it down, spice it in a way that people can eat it and digest it. They like the taste and they can digest it, but you didn't compromise them. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, questions, comments, corrections?
I had a thought on the last point. The concern we were expressing, future, and the example of the grandfather and the progressive generations.
Yes.
So, and you were pointing out earlier how both Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and Srila Prabhupada, because they were completely Krishna conscious, they could present it purely in any context, although the details may appear different to people that just see the externals. So, and then you're concerned about whether it'll transmit. So does that mean that pretty much devotees in each generation really have to come to that level of devotional purity and understanding to be able to transmit it contemporaneously?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
I'll have to repeat the question. Bhaktivinoda is asking is we're talking about the difficulties of transmission, because it's always the tendency for it to get deviated or watered down or changed, destroyed, a few other words, obliviated, perverted. Compromised, contaminated, diluted. Diluted is probably, basically diluted is probably the most common, I think. Does it mean that we have to preserve exactly, we have to understand the question, we have to understand exactly what was given to us so that we can preserve it? And is that the question? The onus is on us?
Kind of, like, in other words, to give the essence and change the context, it would seem that you're indicating that in each generation devotees, there have to be devotees that are really...
Yeah, you have to understand tattva. The first thing you have to understand what it is you're giving, so that when the context changes, you make sure you can still give it, although changing the bottles, the wine stays the same. And you may have to spice it up a bit. But you didn't. You added some spice to it, put it in a new bottle, people like it, but they got the medicine. It's not like you diluted the medicine, because the medicine's too bitter and nobody would take it. Yeah, we want to make it sweet, for sure. And Prabhupada said it's a failure if people can't digest the message. That's our failure. It's our fault. Because, I can just speak the truth and you may all run away and hate me forever, and and the GBC will bring me in and say, what did you do? The whole temple in Hawaii, fell apart after you came. I just spoke the truth. That's all I did. So I have to take responsibility for how I speak the truth. But when I was hearing your question, I was thinking, it is this anyabhilashita shunyam, pure bhakti. What is pure bhakti? And what isn't pure bhakti? That's everything that Prabhupada is teaching is all about pure bhakti. Everything's about pure bhakti. That's the goal. Everything. If you want to take any page from any book that Prabhupada has written and make the supposition that he's just talking about pure bhakti, anyabhilashitam sunyam, jnana, free of jnana, free of karma. That's what he's talking about. That's what he's talking. That's what you'll find, directly, indirectly. It's there. So what is pure bhakti, and what isn't pure bhakti? How does pure bhakti manifest? How doesn't it manifest? Because sometimes it can manifest in ways where it's not manifest. It just looks like it, and it's not. It's a shadow, or vice versa. So these things, you have to know these things if you're going to share it, because you may share the wrong thing, because you don't understand it yourself. But more importantly than understanding is practicing. You have to be it. Because if you just teach it and you're not it doesn't communicate. So really, the bottom line is you have to be it, because that's how people understand it. By your behavior, they understand what is pure bhakti. It's just like if you do something. Why are you doing that? Well, it's because Prabhupada wanted it. Well, isn't it difficult? Yeah, but he wanted me, so I do it. Oh, so then they understand. Oh, that's what Krishna consciousness. Sometimes you do something, it's difficult even though you don't like it, because that's what your guru wants. So, yeah. Yes?
Yeah, the Gaudian mass downfalls because they didn't follow Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's instructions that carefully.
Yeah. No, it's different. We're seeing, specifically, I don't know if you're seeing, but specifically I'm seeing in the last few years, I don't know if it's in the stars or COVID, Devi has had some influence, but dissension. Dissension is quite common. And I've seen dissension intensify in the last few years. I don't know if you've been seeing that. But in the circles I work with, and I've seen a lot of dissension. And it's becoming, we all know it's difficult to cooperate. It's becoming aware of how difficult is lately. And so that's where they failed. Because it requires compromise, it requires a deep faith in the order of the Guru, and there's always that, well, if the Guru didn't understand, things are different, he didn't understand. Which, you could say that in some situations, as even Prabhupada said that, you decide, I don't know. But when it's more fundamental, you have to know what he would allow you to fudge with, or he'd even want you to fudge with, and what he wouldn't. And that GBC, forming a GBC is not something he wanted them to fudge with. And that's where they failed. And it's amazing, we're not talking about average people here, picked up from countries outside of India. We're talking about very elevated, renounced people who had difficulty working together. And a lot of it was consequential. It was, the feud was amongst leaders, and everyone else was displaced because the movement was displaced, and that they had to find somewhere to go, form their own independent organization as a consequence, just so they could continue the mission in some way. So, I think it looks bad on a lot of them that weren't maybe involved in, maybe they were saying, no, there should be a GBC, but they didn't have power. You know how it is. Who do you tell? You see something wrong, who do you tell? Who's going to listen to you? So that's a speculation, but I don't think it was a whole, 50-50 division. I mean, look at Prabhupada he was also, he was working to support a temple, a Gaudiya Math temple. His Sannyas Guru's temple, he was helping that. So, things which we thought 50 years ago would be simple. We just have a GBC. What's the problem? We have one. There was no problem because Prabhupada was here. The problem was when he left, there was a problem, because now it was relying on us to be better. We didn't have to be so good when Prabhupada was here, because he kind of just kept us up. And so, and I think that obviously is going to be a problem with every generation. When the Guru goes, you realize how much he held you up and how easy things were. Things were like, we thought we understood everything when Prabhupada was here. And then he left. It's like, what does this mean? We're still trying to figure out Guru Tattva. Although Shastra says you'll never figure it out. It's a chinja. You can't. There'll always be differing opinions. The Guru should ride in an elephant. No, he should crawl in and touch everyone's feet. What's the Guru? The most humble or the most exalted? Or both in one body? So many ideas. So I think, the essence, the tattva, what is pure devotional service? That has to be very clear in the context that Prabhupada gave it and defined it, how he defined it. Like one time, he said, Srila Prabhupada, how can we love you? Or what does it mean to love you? And Prabhupada said, follow the regulative principles. Like, we wouldn't think that love means follow regulative principles. So many initiates weren't following. So the Prabhupada said, you say, I love you, Prabhupada. Yeah, you love me, follow your vows. Like, get that back to basics. So, defining things in terms of how Prabhupada defined them is important. How did he define pure devotional service? What was he looking for? When he saw the pure, simple devotion of a pujari who was steady, telling them you go back to Godhead, when the efforts, the endeavors of his disciples to distribute books, no matter how many, a lot or little, how much he appreciated that. The sacrifice devotees went through to serve, how much he appreciated that. I heard this story, I don't know if you know this story. This is one of the most amazing stories, I think, about Prabhupada. When Prabhupada was here, they said, Prabhupada, on the Big Island we have a farm community, we'd like to take you. And Prabhupada said, okay, we'll go. He didn't even go to the farm community. He went there because Gaur Sundar was living there. He went there just to meet Gaur Sundar. And he went to Gaur Sundar and he said, what did I do to cause you to leave? Apologizing. Hare Krishna. I mean, look at that example. So how important is it to understand Prabhupada 360? Because you might see Prabhupada on the Vyasasana as the lion guru. But what about this? What did I do wrong to cause you to leave? Like, how could I make up for it? What do I have to do for you to come back? What an example. So we need to understand Prabhupada in every aspect. When sannyasis fell and they came back, and Prabhupada accepted them, and they said, oh, Prabhupada, you're accepting me. And he said, yes, I can't forget the service you rendered, any service you rendered. And then one of the beautiful stories, I don't know if you know the story. Prithu Prabhu had a board, and it was a magnetic board. So each magnet was like a plastic on the outside, and you could write the name of the devotee. And then had departments, Sankirtan, kitchen, pujari, whatever the department was, and the names of devotees, and so you could move them around. So Prabhupada saw it, kitchen, these three, pujari department, these, and if you want to take someone from the kitchen department, pujari department, just move it. Oh, this book distributor, he's going to cook, so this cook's going to go on book distribution. So Prabhupada saw it, and he said, can I move it around? Then Prabhupada moved it around a little. And then Prabhupada told Prithu Prabhu, he said, this will never work without love and trust. So, these little things, that, and understanding the heart of Prabhupada are very important for the future of our movement, because there will be devotees who will look at Krishna consciousness as rules and regulations and will administer as rules and regulations like it's a military thing, without heart, without that other side, and it'll ruin everything. And they'll base it on Prabhupada's teachings unless they understand Prabhupada's heart. So what Prabhupada taught, here's what he taught. No compromise, pure devotional service. What was in the heart? Krishna will forgive you if you fall, if you're sincere, continue trying, like that. So that balance. So that's what I feel is needed. And so Prabhupada said Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was 90% strict and I'm 90% lenient. So that was Prabhupada's equation in his mind when he came to the West. I have to be 90% lenient. So with the 10% I'll get the pure devotional philosophy in, and the 90% I'll be able to get it in because I'm lenient, and they will love me and they will serve me. Prabhupada knew that we weren't very advanced, so he would do things to endear us to him so that we want to serve him. And we could purely serve him, even though we didn't have pure devotional service. So it's like a trick. We would purely serve Prabhupada even though we weren't pure devotees, and that way develop pure devotional service. So that's my particular, bird's eye view of traveling to many, many countries every year, in places that there are very few Prabhupada disciples. And now, even if they're Prabhupada disciples, a lot of them are not active. They're not well. They're not unable to participate, or for other reasons they can't participate. And so there's not a lot of who Prabhupada is coming down. And that's why it's so important to understand what he taught and how he lived what he taught. That's because I see it's so easy to misunderstand how we think he would live, what he taught, because what he taught is so heavy. So you assume he must be like this when he not always was like that. And we know that because we live with him. Right? Like the whole woman issue is so hard for young women. Because when they read what Prabhupada said, and most of what he said is not what he said, it's coming from Manu Samhita or Chanakya Pandit or others. And they think, oh, he must be like this, but he wasn't. Right? He wasn't. It's like, why aren't all the Prabhupada disciples all up at arms with what he said? It's because we were with him and he wasn't like that. So it's like we didn't see what he said the way you might assume what he said was supposed to mean because we saw what he was like. You know. I mean, I have that experience. Because people make judgments about me who never met me just because they read something I said on, Facebook. And I have this interesting experience that it's very, very rare in my life that anyone that I know or know a little bit that I'm personally with would ever say the things that some people say on the internet about me. They would never say it personally. It's just when you're with the person, there's a mood. You feel it. You feel that person. The person's not like, I think he said that, so I think he's like this, but when I meet him, he's much different. I like him. I wouldn't say that because he doesn't fit the description of a person who would say what he said. So I don't know him, and then I respond to him. Happens all the time. So I think the same thing happens when you read what Prabhupada says, because when you're with him, then you feel the person you see. You see that smile, and you're like, oh, that's like slashes, any reservation that this person is heavy, misogynistic, or this phobia or that phobiastic, or whatever. Right? So I try to pass that. I was in Lithuania in September, and the last class I gave, it was just about Prabhupada, how Prabhupada was, because one devotee said that their guru made Prabhupada sound like such a disciplinarian and so black and white. She couldn't read Prabhupada's books. It freaked her out too much. Could you imagine? It was I can't, this is too heavy, I can't read it. So I gave a whole class on what Prabhupada was like. And maybe they hadn't heard that side. Maybe their guru, he's strict, so he sees the strict side. Maybe I'm just too liberal, so I see the other side. But, we have to balance both, of course. But I thought that was important. Oh, not important, essential. So that's the job. That's your job, everyone. Take that pure bhakti, as Prabhupada gave, as it preserved by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta to Prabhupada, preserve it at the same time, take Prabhupada's heart and adaptability so we make it relatable, digestible, without watering it down. And everything will be good. Otherwise, Prabhupada's given us a philosophy, that means we have things to argue about. Before you're a devotee, it's like, you think this, you think that, but there's no absolute. So we're like, yeah, well, that's your opinion, whatever. But it doesn't bother me. You like this idea or don't, we're still friends. You think this speech is better than that, okay, well, it doesn't matter, we're not going to fight about it, get on Facebook and scream. But now you have all kinds of important things to fight about, right? Tattva, eternal truth. You're messing things up. This is the eternal truth. Prabhupada never said that or did it. Yes, he did. He said it. No, So now we have big things to talk about. So, like Nagnapati was saying, the mistakes that the Gaudiya Math made, we can make the same mistakes. Dare I say, we already are. It's just we're smart enough, and we have that example. We're smart enough not to tear things apart. But it's like the cloth is pretty strong, but we're trying to, it's being torn a little bit. It's just not tearing because we're not, you know, we know not to do that. But we're pulling it for sure. And so heart comes in so we can stop pulling and, you know, being empathetic. We're really lacking in empathy, if I dare say so. Yes.
Now, was his father Muslim or from a Muslim community?
Whose father?
Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati.
No.
Or Thakura. Thakura?
You think of Haridas Thakur?
Haridas Thakura.
Haridas Thakura, yeah.
He was Muslim or from Muslim?
Yeah, he was born Muslim.
Did they ever study the Quran or comment on the Quran? Or was it strictly Srila Bhagavatam from the Bhagavad Gita?
Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur studied everything.
Yeah.
He was seeing everything in a Krishna conscious way.
One of the last I read the other day, one of his last quotes was, "You must be ready to shed 200 pounds of blood, 200 gallons of blood."
Yeah.
And I don't want to be a bearer of bad news. I don't know if you heard of Bangladesh, what's been happening there in the temple.
Recently?
Yeah.
Like yesterday?
It's ongoing, been attacked by Muslims.
Again?
It's been ongoing. I just read the latest news.
Oh, Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. That's another topic. Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, anyway, we could relate that topic because you take scripture, put it in the hands of the wrong people with the wrong idea, and it turns into this. So, you know, scripture has the potential of being very dangerous in the hands of the wrong people. And history bears this out, not just with Islam, with Christianity also.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's what's referred to in Christianity as weaponizing scripture. I mean, not literally killing, that's just a logical conclusion if you don't control it, but using scripture to destroy people.
Raise the sword.
Well, just to shame you. I can use scripture to shame you. I mean, killing you is, you know.
Yeah, these
It's
are
a different-
like mob attacks.
Yeah. Yeah. Scripture in the hands of uneducated, it's not generally the intellectuals that are the ones doing such things. As far as I understand, I could be wrong. It's supposed to be a religion of peace that has turned into this. So,
Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Every verse of scripture can be a weapon to destroy somebody, potentially. Can be used as a weapon to destroy somebody, potentially. If that's the motive. You know, if you want to destroy people. You know, the Christians on the street screaming, telling people they're going to go to hell, telling devotees we're going to go to hell. So that's weaponizing scripture. If I say, "Oh Prabhu, I didn't see you at Mangal Artik, you're going to go to hell for that." You know? Like right here, it says right here. Prabhupada said.
He said the truth will make you angry.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Okay, yes.
Just real quick thing. It was interesting when you're talking about, there's very few Prabhupada disciples around, and really given that actual experience of the Prabhupada imaginary disciples according to philosophy. And it's very relevant and important because we see in the sense of many other different types of religious traditions, how they branched out in so many different ways. And you see Christianity is kind of a good example versus Catholicism and it turned into Protestant Reformation. And within Protestants you have so many divisions of that. But it's kind of like, it seems almost like a common thing that happens in many faiths, the religion faiths in splinter. And even within, say, the short period of this time, we've seen certain splinter groups come from this now. Ways. So it just seems like it seems like something common that people tend to do, or Prabhupada would say things Like,
Yeah, it's
The
true.
Western mind tends to speculate a lot.
Mhm.
The Western minds tend to be like that. But even if you have the short experience with Niniskan, the people that have bad experience with Niniskan said, okay, I like the Christian consciousness, I just want the organization affects all
Yeah.
certain things.
Yeah. 5 years and we have about 5 branches. So if we do the math, in 10,000 years, how many branches are we?
Thank God for Krishna consciousness. What Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati himself says, it's very esoteric.
Yeah.
And maybe people think the standards are too high.
For some people they are, but that's okay. Not everyone has to live those standards. I think the real
Those are masses.
the real mistake is with all the different organizations, if we fight one another, then Maya's laughing at us. Yeah, I got you. This is what I wanted. So if we can peacefully coexist some way, and it's understandable. Some people like living in Florida, some like Alaska. Some like Varnashram, some like a more real, like this is what's real for people. Let's just deal with people that way, what they can do. Don't push them. So we're all different. It's when I think my way's better, you're a fool, you don't know what you're talking about, you don't understand the philosophy, you're a disgrace. That's when we run into trouble. That's why I say empathy is important, because empathy kind of puts the ointment on those differences. So you say, okay, this is how you feel, I can acknowledge that. It's not how I feel, but I can understand more. I can understand every group outside of ISKCON, why there would be a group and how they feel. It's not a problem. And they hopefully can understand those in ISKCON why we want to stay. That's how we can peacefully coexist.
What would you say to someone who's kind of splintered trying to come back into shelter?
What would I say?
Someone like myself is trying to come back, maybe splintered trying to come back.
Yeah, make friends. Have good relationships. That's most important. That's what will keep us. Few good friends. Everyone should have a few good friends. That's how, where you can talk, open your mind, share your troubles. That's most important. So hopefully you can find good friends here. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Prabhu Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. Thank you. Radhanath, you coming today to play Mridanga? To the Sunday feast? Are you in Hawaii? Radhanath here? You don't know. He's online. I guess we'll find out.